Welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. In each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different, and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, OnToAir Backups. OnToAir Backups provides automated Airtable backups to your cloud storage for secure and reliable data protection. Prevent data loss and set up a secure Airtable backup system with OnToAir Backups at OnToAir.com. As one customer, Sarah, said, having automated Airtable backups has freed up hours of my time every other week and the fear of losing anything. Longtime customer David states, OnToAir Backups might be the most critical piece of the puzzle to guard against unforeseeable disaster. It's easy to set up, and it just works. Join Sarah, David, and hundreds more Airtable users like you to protect your Airtable data with OnToAir Backups. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at OnToAir.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air.
Welcome back into the Built on Air podcast. We are in season 20, episode 6. Good to be back with you. I've got myself, Alli with us. Camille is out this week, but we've got special guest Ben Green joining us. Welcome, Ben.
Thanks for having me. Excited
to have you back on. Ben's been on a few times, but we'll get caught up on Ben's story later in the show. So I'll walk us through what we're going to be talking about today. Built on Air podcast is an hour-long show. We'll keep you up to date on everything in the world of Airtable and no-code, low-code. We'll start with our round the bases with what people are talking about in the communities. Then sponsor from OnToAir Backups and how you can get started with that. And then Ben Green will get caught up on Ben, his story and background and what he's up to. And then Ben's going to be walking us through how to use array slice in your formulas and the power of this slice. And then shout out to join our community. And then Alli's going to wrap us up, answer a very common question of what's the best way to dedupe or clean up our data. And going to show us some best practices on that front. So with that, around the bases, let's start with a big announcement. Airtable made public guest access with portals. So they just put this up on their website. It's in beta, early access. You can click on this link. It goes to a form you fill out. And not sure, I assume the beta or this early access, they won't charge you yet, but they do list their pricing.
I think it's free until like January or something like that.
Free to January? Okay.
I think I heard early February, but yeah.
Okay. Have either of you got somebody signed up on this for the early access?
So technically, I don't know if by Airtable standards we were the first, but we used it for Daretable.
Yep.
The link at the top of the Daretable website was to the portal. But yeah, technically that was a portal.
Yep, that's where I first saw or had the experience with it. So I'm curious, like how quickly they'll approve people, if it's just fill out the form and they'll get approved, or if they're limiting who they actually give access to. But yeah, so it has a customer sign-in page, and then the experience is pretty much the same as it. You know, you're essentially just getting access into an interface application. So you won't be able to see the data layer or the automation layer. But it's pretty much the same as if you had editor access to an interface app, right?
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
Except I think the big difference would be if you're not somebody who knows what Airtable is, and I think eventually once they get through some of this white labeling that you're seeing here, you could send this to somebody and they wouldn't know that it's Airtable unless they knew what Airtable looked like. You could send it to someone and it would look like, Built on Air has a custom app for any of their speakers.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if they would allow you to like put it on your own domain and that not be the Airtable domain, which it doesn't say you could have a custom domain for it, but that would be cool.
That would certainly be cool.
Mm-mm.
I will just not comment on things that are allegedly coming.
Fair enough. But yeah, so I guess right now they don't have the white label experience that's coming. So right now, it doesn't. Well, it looks like it just says powered by Airtable. So there is some branding there on the sign in page. But then eventually you can remove that and put your own logo there. I'm guessing that's maybe an enterprise feature, but maybe that'll be available on the team. Not sure. My understanding of how it works is, so I'm sure people are thinking like, oh, I could get all my internal users signed up here because it's only $8 a month versus the editor pricing. The big difference, if you're using, SSO, you wouldn't be able to have somebody with your domain email log in through the portal. I believe there's a restriction there that if you log in with like a company domain that's associated with the SSO, it would not work to go through the portal. Is that fair?
Yeah, the portal's the main like user persona you would have for a portal is anybody not with your same domain, people not on your core team.
Yeah, there it says that user does not share your team or company's email domain.
Yeah.
Or uses a personal domain. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you can't log in with a Gmail to the portal?
No, you can. You'd be considered a guest. So you could invite somebody that technically is an internal user, but if they're using their personal email, then they'd be considered a guest.
I guess I was confused. Does not use a personal domain, or a guest user is one who uses a personal domain?
Yeah, the grammar's a little strange there.
Gotcha. Yeah, that'd be interesting if they didn't allow you to log in with the Gmail.
It would.
The one thing I would say on this is, because I've seen a few examples of the pricing, if you're like you have sticker shock still because it's that price per user that's listed on the website, which is like, I think it comes out to $8. Did it say $8 per user per month above?
After the 120 for 15, yeah.
If you're concerned about how that scales, I'd say reach out to the Airtable sales team and tell them how many users you have, because it does say there's bulk discounts available for large volumes of guests. So don't think it's going to be, let's say you have 100 users, my guess is that price would go down, and you'd be able to negotiate something.
Julian says, I think that means that if your Airtable account if the owner uses a Gmail account, you can't use portals. That'd be interesting.
That would be quite interesting.
So portals only works if you have it tied to a corporate domain so that they can then filter anybody else. So interesting. Yeah, because you always wonder, like, how are they gonna, there's been rumors of this for like a year or desires for it for years, and that was always the thing of like, how are they gonna manage a price discount for all the users that you're already paying for? And so this is kind of the middle ground to separate internal users versus external. But if you invite people with a Gmail domain and you have the same domain, that breaks the stated rule. Yeah. Assuming if you're on a Gmail account, with the admin.
It's
right. So that means the Gmail team can't use Airtable.
Yeah, they're toast.
Yeah. All right. So this is exciting. It'll be interesting how this shakes out with industry players, third-party apps that solve this problem. And there's still definitely differences of functionality, things you can't do in interfaces that you can do with some of these third-party apps. So it doesn't completely eliminate the need, but definitely eliminates a lot of use cases.
I I'd say in general, just my take on how much the Airtable product team has released in the last year, I'd be shaking in my boots if I was one of these external players with just like the velocity that Airtable has been releasing things.
Yeah.
I know for a lot of like the community that we're in, the enterprise features aren't maybe as exciting, but like they've been shipping a lot of stuff on the enterprise. This one is targeted towards some of these external use cases, and they've been testing out things like the Product Central, and which has new features in it that we've never seen. They've been consistently releasing new interface page types and just making it better for everybody. So I'm pretty proud of like, I'm not part of the Airtable team at all, so I don't want to sound like too much of a shill for them, but like they've been putting in a lot of hard work and releasing a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where everything goes, and not surprised that most of the third-party tools are diversifying as much as they possibly can at the same time. You know, a lot of them started out as kind of Airtable was the main data source, and now they're branching out to allow for all sorts of different things. So I think that's the smart move.
Yeah, there are some use cases where the price point, you know, if you're building something that's like, oh, you know, you want like a community or something, like $8 a month just wouldn't be feasible. And even if you got that down to half that, you know, Softer, I think gets down to $1 a month per external. So it's probably, I have seen, it used to be, we all remember where there was some tools that didn't charge you per user, and it was just like flat tiers, and you could have like unlimited users. It seems like those have all gone away, right? I don't know that Jet Admin, maybe, I think they might still not, but all the main players have moved to a per user pricing.
Or tiers of users, like Softer. They've recently changed their pricing, like in the past few months, I believe. But now their professional plan, which is $139 a month, only allows for up to 100 app users. Mm-hmm. And then you can pay $10 for another bucket of 10 users after that.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what people do, how they respond. They're all moving. You know, Softer just announced Notion. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So they're trying to expand beyond Airtable. But I got to imagine, 80-90% of their customer base is on top of Airtable.
Mm-hmm.
So
they just released a REST API as well. Softer did to really expand the sources that you can use, which is exciting.
Yeah. So we'll see how it all evolves. Yeah. All right, let's move on. That's the form to fill out. Okay. We talked about this. So there was a summit last week in London. This is a picture of just the partner summit, which I think is similar to what they did at Airtable. It looks like there was a bigger Europe Airtable summit, and then they had a partner summit. Looks like Nelson was there. I didn't realize he went out to London and met with the team out there. So if you were out there at the London Airtable meetup, we'd love to hear how it went for you. We had a team member that went, and they said it at the conference, so I think I'm okay sharing this, but and he wasn't sure if this was like information that this person wasn't supposed to share or not, but they said that they have in the works the ability to get to 500,000 records per table, and not talking about HyperDB, but within Airtable, 500,000, and the goal to get to 1 million within a year or so. Something along those lines was mentioned at this conference. So that could be interesting. So that for me, that's good to know that they're still trying to expand Airtable and not just say, okay, if you need more, you got to go to HyperDB.
Absolutely.
So hopefully that's true and not misinformation out there. So don't quote me on it. It's third hand at this point. All right. Next one. We always are interested in competitors to Airtable. Here's a new one that I hadn't seen before. NoCodeDB. We've talked about that one, but Grist, maybe we mentioned this. I don't remember seeing this one. So appears to be open source, but also has a paid hosted offering, very similar to Airtable. So if you like to explore open source solutions, here's another one you could try out. There's probably 5 or 6 at this point, at least, that we've talked about over the years, and be interesting to see which ones win out. Okay, one more. So it looks like this. I think we talked about this like 6 months ago, but there's a malware email going around that links to an Airtable base, like a shared base or table, and then inside of there's a link that I think the last one we saw made it try to look like it was like OneDrive, or make you think that it was like OneDrive, and you would have a link to a file, and it would download a program that would install malware on your computer. So something to be aware of. Don't be clicking on random phishing links that take you to Airtable. It's not going to download it if you click on the Airtable link, although you shouldn't anyways, but it's once you get to that, and then there's another link inside of a grid view that takes you to something else.
So are they using the Airtable share link to redirect to their, shouldn't Airtable look at shutting down whoever owns that app ID?
Yeah. This is something, I know the last one they said they reported it to Airtable. I don't know if these guys have, so.
I remember this was a few years ago in the Facebook community. There was some illegal activity that they were managing through Airtable. And I remember this post of this guy saying they had reached out to support asking for support help, and they had added team to their base. And then they posted in the community oh, I can't access my account anymore. Who can help? And I'm pretty sure because they had illegal stuff in their base. So I know Airtable does care about their terms of service. And I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I never talked to this person in the group, but I just remember seeing that post. So they should.
I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. So here's the app ID right here. So Airtable. I know you're watching, faithful watchers of our show. The Airtable security team watches every week. So here's your app ID. Okay. This one's interesting. So Tara Shahan, looks like an author, and used to work at Stripe, wrote this pretty interesting long form kind of on the state of internal software builders. And so definitely worth checking it out. Here's her report that she wrote up, 17-page Google Doc. I have not read all of it, but I plan to, just to kind of get a sense of where she's viewing kind of the state of the no-code, low-code platforms, and how there's just a huge graveyard of all these products that just never quite, had initial success, but never quite broke through, and failure to launch at the teenage, stage, and includes kind of, although her analysis is that she thinks Airtable's still in that teenager stage, which I think might be fair compared to some of the legacy platforms, Salesforce and whatnot. So, but I don't think I'd put it in the failure to launch stage. I think there is still upward trajectory. Obviously, we're all biased in that choice, but pretty interesting. If you like to kind of get into the philosophical, AI plays a huge part in this, and that's what she talks about, of what is the next phase of platforms that at their core are built around AI. Anything like Airtable, obviously has AI now built into it, but it wasn't started in the AI era, and how that might look different in a couple of years when these, AI first platforms emerge. Any thoughts on where things are at as an industry high level view?
It's hard to say. I think, I don't know. There's a very fine line, I think. It's great that more people have access to build these tools and spin them up very quickly. But I think then you also have a lot more tools that are more fallible because people that don't have the experience and things like know what to look for then are creating things that can break. But then you learn from it. So it's both good and bad, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty interesting. Anything else? Yeah, so here's kind of this chart. It's kind of interesting. Ease of customization, and power. And so you kind of lose some power functionality to make it easier to use. And, what does AI do to this curve? So things like that. Anyways, definitely worth keeping an eye on.
I'd say in general with Airtable, that's every time, as much as I do love their product releases consistently, like every single month, every time I do see the product release, I always think this is more job security for me, Dan, and Alli, because every time they're adding more customization, it means it's a little bit harder of a tool to pick up. Like, especially if I think about what Airtable looked like 4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
When I first started, there were no interfaces, there were no automations. It was just the data layer. Yeah. And it was relatively easy for me to pick it up back then because it was like pretty much just access being the data layer. But now with AI, with interfaces, with automations, with all the other stuff, it makes it harder to customize for a general user.
Yep, absolutely. But still way easier than Salesforce.
Yeah. And there's so much demand still for Airtable solutions. Like, people still are asking for it more than they were 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting how it's evolved. Do you know what logo this is?
It looks like a Microsoft logo.
Yeah, is that the Power Automate? Yeah, the Power App. That's probably what it is. So, all right, let's move on. A couple from the BuiltOnAir community. Alli, we're going to feature you. Justin says that's Visual Studio Code, so I guess that makes sense. So pure code. Ben, you didn't know that one? That's funny. Okay, Alli, let's ask your question. Any documentation around this? So this is related to fill out. Doesn't support user collaborator fields from Airtable.
Yes.
Did you get an answer?
I did. And the answer is that no, they do not. And I meant to comment back on this to update Martin. So thank you, Martin, for all your digging into that as well. It does have to do with it being difficult to grab them, and you need to have an enterprise account in order to even have access to that API call. And this is honestly news to me. I was rebuilding a mini extensions form in fill out, and in mini extensions, I had a drop down that was a user field from Airtable and worked no problem. Although the client's account is an enterprise account. So maybe mini extensions never had problems with it because it was pulling it from an enterprise account. But I was very surprised. I didn't think that this would be a thing, but it is. So yeah, I had to find a workaround and just use easiest solution for me was just a long text field. I was just trying to capture like somebody's saying, I'm the one that did this using fill out, rather than rebuild a whole new table with all of the employees. We just decided to do long text, or single line text, either way.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. I'm not sure why I know we had a form solution and we supported user fields.
yeah, I was surprised. I didn't think,
Yeah.
but yeah, they did fill out confirm that no, they don't support it.
That is interesting.
Yes.
Maybe because it changes all the time. They could get deleted more. You could remove somebody's access, so that breaks things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, another one, Alli. You've been busy. This one last week. Field metadata. Explain what's going on here.
Yeah, so I have a script that I use to populate a table of tables and a table of fields. And so I access the metadata via scripting and populate all these field values on a table. And I noticed, because I was trying to translate what is currently something I run in the extensions panel to an automation, which that's been a heck of a project to try and do. It's working around the 30-second time limit and trying to pass things from one step to another and figure out where it's slowing down. But regardless, in doing so, I figured out that in the automation script, if you call the same exact code and access the property of options from the field metadata, it gives you something completely different than if you ran the same code in the extension. Mainly around, this appears to affect just lookups of select fields. So lookups of multi-select and single selects. If you run it in the automation script, you get a result property, which shows you all of the choices that exist in that select that's being looked up. Whereas if you run it from the extension, you don't get that result property, or you do get a result property, but it doesn't show you all the choices. It just actually erroneously categorizes it as a single line text result, which is, I think, a remnant from before they retained the look and feel of select fields when you did a lookup of them. Previously, years ago, it would be single line text. If you did a lookup of a single select, it would look like just text. Sorry, that's a long explanation, but yeah, the same code produces different results in the automation panel versus the extension.
Yeah. And the API handles it differently as well. So you've got 3 different variations depending on how you're accessing the data,
which is interesting.
Yeah. And the API is different. And then if you implement webhooks, it's different there as well. There's some differences. So.
Yep.
Lacking consistency. All right, last one. Okay, let's see if we can answer this for Leona. Enterprise customers can choose different LLMs for Airtable AI. But do you know what the source is for non-enterprise account default to? I believe it's OpenAI. It's ChatGPT. I'm not sure which version.
Everything defaults to OpenAI. But maybe we could show how to figure that out. You go into an AI field, and in the field there should be a little settings wheel, and in that settings wheel you're able to change the model.
Yeah. I have enterprise accounts, so I don't know if I could show it, or I've free. I don't have a team account that I could easily access. It's not a client.
I did this the other day.
That's where I know on enterprise it gives you that option. I don't know if it gives you the option, but there's only one drop down on a team plan.
When I did this with a client, it wasn't in an AI field, it was the AI automation step. And I'm pretty sure it did give a drop down. I know that it included a bunch of different models of ChatGPT, and I want to say that it defaulted to 3.5. But then you could choose like 4.5 from the drop down. Can't remember if I saw other ones. I know there was a couple different ChatGPT models though.
Yeah. So but for sure, I'm pretty sure it defaults to ChatGPT. That was the first one that they did, so likely it defaults to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Leona, let us know if you get confirmation on that and see if you can find it in the dropdown. All right, that concludes our round the bases. If you are running your business on Airtable, best practice is to make sure your data is stored outside of Airtable, and that's where OntoAir comes in. We help back up your data to places like Google Drive, Box, Dropbox, and we now support OneDrive as well. So check us out, ontoair.com. We also have the ability to restore your backup back into Airtable, and lots of new functionality that we're working on that I'm excited about to share in the coming weeks. So use promo code BuiltOnAir. That'll get you a discount. Ontoair.com will be the place to make sure your data is safe and secure outside of Airtable. With that, Ben, regular Ben, you should know Ben's name. He's everywhere. Let me get you big screen. So Ben, tell us a little bit about just kind of your history and story and how you came into this world of Airtable.
Happy to. I did not know I was going to be talking through this before this. I thought I was just talking about array slice for the record, so this may be a little bit rough. But I've been in the Airtable community really since the first Airtable users conference. Do you guys remember the virtual one?
Mm-hmm.
So the virtual one, I think it was either that same day or the day after I posted my first YouTube video. But like 3 months before that, I had found Airtable. That really long story short, it may be a long story, I don't know. I was trying to work for this guy for free. He said no, but if you can do anything, like go learn Airtable or learn a tool called ActiveCampaign. I was like, well, Airtable seems easier to learn, so I chose Airtable, and I had come from getting my degree in information systems and operations, so I had learned how to code in a few different languages. Hated it, still hate it. But I'd also learned like Microsoft Access. So I was coming from all these like classical training of software development from Indiana University. And then I found Airtable and I was like, oh, this is actually so much easier than I thought, because I had also taken classes in Excel. So I knew the formulas pretty well. Microsoft Access, as far as getting the fundamentals of a relational database, was pretty similar to Airtable. So I picked up Airtable pretty quick. Went back and like worked for some people for free. I actually found like some of my first testimonials from helping people out in the BuiltOnAir community. That's how I got started, was I would just answer people's questions. Then they would say, hey, can we jump on a call? And then I'd help them out for free for a little bit, so that basically I could get some proof of value, and then ended up getting my first few clients. So that's how I first got started.
Have you gone back to that person that turned you down and said, look at me now?
No, they ended up hiring me later though.
Okay.
So it did end up coming full circle a few months later. Once I had learned Airtable, they just didn't have the time. I wanted to work for them so that they could teach me Airtable, which hindsight, it was going to be more work for them than it would cost them to just hire somebody.
Very cool.
So that's how I got started.
And you're talk a little bit about origins of let's do the Facebook community and also Airtable.
Yeah, so the Facebook community, let's see if I can share my screen for those who have not yet joined the Facebook community, or sticklers like Scott Rose. I'm going to call Scott out because Scott says he does not have a Facebook account, but I know he created one once and tried to join.
He does, because I'm friends with him on Facebook. He's been posting about his trips.
Yes. I think he got one maybe for that trip. But the Facebook community is near and dear to my heart. I started becoming an admin of this. When I first, like, this group has been around longer than I've known about Airtable. So it's existed for quite a long time. There's a lot of people in it. But I'd connected with the former admin of this community probably around 4 years ago. And I was just like at that time I was in college. I was just basically trying to put out as much free value as I could, posting YouTube videos and answering people's questions. And so I was just answering people's questions, and then that connected me with the admin of the group. Now I think I'm an admin, Chris is an admin, Charlie is an admin of this group. But basically we just try to keep it as similar to the BuiltOnAir community, where it's just very helpful. People come in here, ask questions, and we try to get them answers. Now there's like a lot of people answering questions, which is pretty cool to see. For a few months when I was first starting out, it was mainly just me. Occasionally we get a few AI people in here answering questions with like really chat GPT answers that don't make sense. But for the most part, people get help just like the other communities. So
I will say I think it seems like you and Chris have done a really good job of cracking down on that. I've seen that get reduced quite a lot in the last few weeks, which
Facebook has some good features that like allow you to ban somebody and also ban their future profiles.
Oh, wow.
So like it knows based on maybe them using the same device, I think, to block their future profile, not even let them see the group. So we've been doing a lot of that and a lot of cleaning up answers in there.
Yep.
It's
cool. So yeah, join that's the largest Facebook community of Airtable users. So join that there. Talk a little bit about Airtable.
Let's see. So Airtable, I can pull up the website in a second. The other things I was just going to reference, I don't know if the screen share is still on, but
yep.
This was the channel where I started. If I go to the oldest video, one of these videos, I think probably this one right here was the first one that I had posted back in 2020, but I go through some consistency, some inconsistency of posting whenever I have something that I think would be helpful. And then recently we also started posting different videos with clients and different videos with team members that we've brought on, because since I started, for me, for a while, for like 2 years, it was just me. And then about 2 years ago, I partnered with Charlie. And so Charlie and I have been partners, and we've slowly grown a team too. We have now 4 full-time employees. We have a lot of people helping us out on different projects. So if you want to meet the team, this channel is a good place for you to meet the other people in the team. But Airtable, which we had a live stream of, if you just saw the URL, Airtable, like I said, when I posted my first video the day after the first user conference, which at that time it was called the Airtable Unofficial User Conference was the name of it. And I met up, like Chris hosted that. I was just a participant. Yeah, Chris Dancy. He'll actually be on next week.
Yep.
And you mentioned Notion earlier. You can ask him what he thinks about Notion maybe next week. He had some funny responses about that. But I met up with Chris after that because I posted in the Facebook community, because there was at the time there was this thing called Clubhouse. If anybody remembers Clubhouse, and we were like, let's start an Airtable Clubhouse. There's not Airtable in Clubhouse. Now I don't think anybody uses Clubhouse, but at the time it was the cool thing to do. So we started doing audio live streams on there, I guess. We ended up wanting to do some videos. So we ended up switching it to Zoom and kind of still holding our phones up, so if people were on Clubhouse, they could join. But through that, we started talking, maybe we should do a user conference in person. And so at that time, we landed on Austin, and we started organizing this event in Austin. I'd say every Airtable, though, Chris has done 80 or 90% of the work. He's like the main organizer. And I've been there basically as a partner to help with what I can, offer the Facebook community to help get people to go there and see how I can support Chris. But the first year we did Austin, then we did San Francisco at Airtable headquarters. And then this year we did it in New York, which was 2 weeks ago now, roughly 2 weeks ago. This year it was, every year it's grown bigger and bigger. This year was the largest. There was like 275 people, I'd say, but the room was packed. I had to yell at Dan to go sit down because there were not enough seats, and he had to go squeeze in places.
That's right. Very cool. So Ben's been everywhere. And now OptimizeIS is the company that Ben runs with Charlie and help companies of all sizes. And I'll toot your horn, just received top partner of the year, or I don't know, what's the official?
Airtable partner of the year.
Partner of the year. Okay. So doing great things there at OptimizeIS. So you can find them OptimizeIS.com or YouTube channel.
Yep, exactly. OptimizeIS.com, the YouTube channel. You could message me on Facebook or LinkedIn, but those first 2 places are the easiest places to get in touch with us.
Yep. He's also in the BuiltOnAir community and I don't know how much you post in the Airtable community anymore, but at one point was active there. I don't think anybody posts there anymore.
That's actually a little bit relevant. The Airtable community, just a quick plug for them. They're starting these things called user groups. And I actually just led the first call with the marketing user group last week. So I think it was last week. I hosted one and I basically went through like 101 for marketing in Airtable. And there was like 20 people that showed up, which was pretty awesome to this. It was like a Zoom call. So everybody was in the Zoom call. Mm-hmm. People asked questions and got some pretty good engagement, but that's the extent that I've engaged really in the Airtable community so far.
Recently, yeah. Okay.
And just another quick plug, Jen Rudd she's the user group leader of AI. I don't want to say specifically when her event is because I'll get it wrong, but soon in November, she's hosting a user group for AI.
Yeah, gotcha. Those are the two that they are doing right now, right? Or is there another one? Yeah.
Just those.
Yeah. So yeah, they're kind of moving to user groups around specific topics. So see how that goes. Awesome. Thank you, Ben. And now Ben's going to show us the secrets of the slice.
Sweet. Have either of you used the array slice formula?
I haven't needed to really yet.
Okay, good. Dan?
I think I have, yeah, but it's been a while.
Okay, so in regards to like the history of Airtable formulas, this one is relatively new, I'd say.
You want to share your screen?
Yep, I'm just pulling it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say it's probably even the new list. They very rarely add new functions.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So yeah, array slice, as far as them, it's probably like 2 years old now, but it's like the newest batch of formulas. I think before array slice, it was regex that came out.
Yeah.
Which actually you'll see a little bit of regex, not regex that I wrote, of course, because I don't code.
Now AI writes it.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'll be going through is the array slice and why you would want to use array slice. I have a very specific use case that I'll be talking about, but it may give you ideas if you want to use it as well. So the problem that I came up with was I needed to do matchmaking. If you think about something like Match.com or like dating services or anywhere where you want to do matchmaking, it could be you with your vendors. I know Airtable has some AI functionality around trying to suggest linked records. That's like a concept of Airtable trying to help you do matchmaking in linked records. But really, if you want to calculate the similarities or differences in two data sets, that's what I'm talking about with matchmaking. The specific example that I am going to use and show on this demo is if I look over here on the left, we have these 5 linked records. How many of these are similar with the ones on the right? Some key considerations that makes this difficult is the order of these linked records may be random. They're not going to be in the same order necessarily as over here. Like over here, virtual reality gaming comes before astrophotography. It's the opposite over here. And then it also must be scalable. I'm going to add like a pin in that comment because it is, I've made array slice scalable up to a certain point that I'll talk about later. But in an ideal world, like some of the solutions I'm going to talk about that used to be maybe a solve for this, they're not very easily scalable to hundreds of records. So why is matchmaking like this difficult? If you have like 100 comma separated values and I want you to tell me what the 42nd one is using a formula, not a script, just a formula output, that's like pretty difficult because maybe if you're trying to use commas to use it, to like figure out which one it is, and you're most likely using something like regex or the find formula nested a ton, and there's error that's like pretty error prone because there could be commas in one of the values that you find. So it's not going to be a perfect solution. Now I'm going to show a few examples of community posts that I found from like pre-array slice to show like maybe how certain people came up with similar solutions to this, but just in the past. this one is not using comma. It's not using like a roll up or lookup or even commas as the separator. But I just saw this formula, had no idea what this part of the formula regex extract meant. So I threw it in here.
Justin is watching right now. So
yeah. So this is not to hate on the people who did these. This was just pre-array slice. And this is like, I don't know how to do this formula. Whereas array slice should make something like this easier if it is linked records or lookups that you're dealing with. Another one was this one. I can't remember who, I should have screenshotted who exactly wrote this, but this is just another complex find formula. And I think so is the next one. This one is actually using Alli's. If you want to like start nesting find formulas, because in the find formula, like the last operator in it, you can say define a start from position. So in theory, back to my like question of return me the 40-second comma separated value. In theory, you could like nest 42 find record formulas together, more or less, and get close to it. But it's like super clunky, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
this is 2019. 2019.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So enter the array slice format, and this is just a screenshot from Airtable, so sorry, it's blurry. It's usually much smaller than this. The array slice formula it's used in a roll-up field, I think, exclusively. So you should be familiar with a roll-up field at this point, where it references the values of whatever field you're referencing. The key things to know is it has a start and an end position. So in using an array slice, if I asked you to give me the second value in a roll-up field, I would use this formula right here: array slice values, start at position 2 and end at position 2. And then for the fourth value, just to show you a pattern, I would start at position 4 and end at position 4. So go to the next one. So the new way, how I've been using array slice for matchmaking, is using, like, in a roll-up field, you can use a ton of you can use the same formula and reference like these array formulas multiple times. You can also reference other fields, like a count all with values. You can reference these multiple times. So by chaining a lot of these together, and if I go back to this previous slide, in my example, if I went to reference these two data sets, the key thing, because the orders are not the same, is I want to evaluate each item, or each, maybe somebody can help me with the proper way to say this, but each item in the roll-up field, each item in the array separately. So I want to evaluate the first one, then I want to evaluate the second one, then I want to evaluate the third one and see if they match the other field. So that's what this is doing. If we look in here just at the first, actually, let's look at like the fourth one. So array slice values 4, 4, that's going to return the value in the fourth item in the array, but it's only going to evaluate that if we have at least 4 items. And then what I'm doing here is I'm trying to find that fourth value in this other field. And if I find it, I return the number 1. And if I don't find it, then I return 0. In a dating profile, this example is to show like a compatibility score between two, like return it as a percentage. So it's find all of the matches compared to how many possible matches there could be, and return that as a percentage. So I think in this example, it's showing 2 of 8 is 25%. So I'm going to go click into the demo of this and you can see examples, but the other concern is scalability, because you do have to set a defined limit as far as how many linked records you'll allow the system to evaluate. This is as far as I built the formula up to. This was a while ago. I built it up to 1,141 linked records and it worked fine. It saved the formula, it evaluated it. I never tested it actually with that many linked records, but I trust that it worked. So it is scalable. up through hundreds of linked records, and you don't have to worry about like what position the comma is in using this. So I would argue it's more scalable than a bunch of nested find formulas. The flaws with this, before I dive into the demo, is it doesn't account for partial matches. So if I used an example, let's see. The one that's coming top of mind is maybe there's like two lists of companies and they're not like super clean companies, but maybe one is Ford, and the list you also have Ford Motor Company. It would find, because you're using the find formula, if you're trying to find Ford in this list, but Ford Motor Company is there, it's going to return like a positive indicator. So it doesn't solve for that. The other flaw is you do have to set a defined limit. And then I tested this in a really large base with the 1,141 linked record option. And there was probably 6 or 7 different tables where we were using it. And the use case was we were trying to see what are the differences in sets of linked records between like a verified data set in Snowflake and like we wanted to enable the user to make edits in Airtable and to give a report back to the Snowflake gods of here's the differences. And so when we use like 50 plus formulas with a base that it had a ton of records, it did slow down performance of the base. So just FYI, if you try to use a lot of these, that's another flaw. So I'm happy to go into the demo, but that's my array slice pitch for anybody.
All right. Let's do it.
So this is my matchmaking, which I actually used Airtable AI CoBuilder to get me this base in the demo. Quick shout out for CoBuilder.
Nice.
But what I'm doing is, and there need to be an automation to stamp these values in this field. If you watch the video of me creating this demo, which will be posted on YouTube later, just because I wanted to make the video about it, you can't run it off of the profile 1 field, because all of the interest should be pulled from profile 1 in this example, but any of the array formulas consider all of these like one value in the array. So when you create the matches table, you would have to have an automation like stamp the interest from whenever it was created in here. Does that make sense?
I think, yeah, if that were a lookup of the interest from profile 1, it's going to be looking that up as one array it's like a sub array. I wonder if it might work if you used array flatten, but array flatten kind of functions a little strangely sometimes.
Yeah. So this is what I created. I think I created this one for up to 10, but it's basically saying, give me the value 1 if there are matches, and then sum all of those ones up and divide it by the total number of items in this linked record field. So if I looked at this one, and if we just pop it open, there are 5 options in this interest from profile 1. 2 of those same options, these last 2, also exist in profile 2. And so it's showing 2 of 5 is 40% in this example. Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome. Good stuff. So that's very helpful to understand array slice and how you can use it. And let's move on. So we got time here. Okay. Thank you, Ben. And if you want more insights from amazing people like Ben, Alli, myself, and many others, thousands of people in the BuiltOnAir community, join us, builtonair.com/join. We have an active Slack community, also an amazing newsletter to keep you up to date on everything going on in this world. So join us at builtonair.com, and we'd love to meet with you. Okay, Alli, walk us through deduping and cleaning up.
All right. Okay, so I had a client ask me last week about this use case, which is very common. And if you're using Airtable a lot and especially when you're just starting a new base. Maybe you've inherited a data set from, I don't know, HubSpot or an old CRM or somewhere where somebody, it's like, let's say you've got a list of companies and there hasn't been much validation against that list, and maybe it's just grown unwieldy over time. And so when you grab it and try and put it into Airtable, you might see stuff like this, where we've got, this is all the same company, Borer and Sons, but it's been entered 3 different ways. We've got Borer ampersand Sons, Borer and Son without an S on the end, and then Borer and Sons with the word and all spelled out. So there's all sorts of different examples of why this might happen over time. But how do you go about cleaning this up in an efficient way so that you can have just one version of this company instead of 3 different versions in your end result? There's so many approaches to this. I'm just going to show kind of how I would approach it. Everybody, I think, has landed on different ways of doing this, but I'm just going to show what I would recommend to start. So the very first thing that I always do when I'm trying to clean up this data is I duplicate this column and make sure I leave on the duplicate cells toggle, because I want to preserve how this data looked when it first came in. If you don't do this step, you are very likely going to get frustrated and, kind of have to go backwards again to revert to what you like, where you started, because of a couple different things. So let's just say I'm just going to rename this to company backup. Let's say I take this and just edit the field, change it to a linked record field, and create a new table of companies. Things are going to look really bad. So when I go to my companies table, you can see these have been all changed into linked records, but anywhere where they had a comma has split that into multiple records. So now I've got this just Inc. here instead of strike, comma, Inc. It made that on its own record. Anywhere where there was an LLC, now I've got this across a couple different records instead of being tied to where it was originally. So that's the first place that you might get really thrown off, is anywhere where you have commas, it's going to split that into multiple records, and then you're already starting off on a bad note, which is not easy. So I'm going to undo that. I just hit Control Z or Command Z on my keyboard. And instead, and I'm actually going to go delete this company's table too, because we don't need that. So first thing I do, I duplicate the column. Second thing I do, I'm going to create a formula field, and I'm going to write a substitute function where I'm going to take that company name and just get rid of any commas. So I know that I'm not, I don't have to worry about those records getting split up into 2 different buckets, or possibly even 3. And now I can take this and link this to a new table of companies. And let's just call this company link. So now my problem isn't 100% solved, because I still have all these different versions of each company name. And what you do from here is totally up to you. I see 2 potential paths. One is you could manually actually just go group this together and see, as I'm going through, I'm like, okay, Bayer, Muller in hand, Bayer, Muller in hand. These are actually the same company. So I can choose which one I want to keep. I can check off the ones in the group that I want to lose. And then I can just grab these and put them into this other bucket. And if I do that all the way down my table, I'm going to end up with a bunch of records on my company's table that are now empty with the people link here. And then I can just come here, filter it by that, and delete the extras. So that's one approach. Another approach, though, is to actually use the dedupe extension, which if you don't have a very large data set, this is actually really, really nice because you can do a couple things. You can say what field you want to define as the place to look for duplicates. And this is going to say no duplicates found, but that's because I don't actually have real duplicates on this table right now because of the way that things are spelled out. But the great things about this dedupe extension are that you can change this to a couple different levels. I could say, look for similar, and that's going to pick up these two. One has a period on the end of ink and the other does not. And then I can also use fuzzy, which is actually going to pick up even more. Doesn't grab all of them, unfortunately, but it's going to get you started in a really strong way, which is really nice. So if I hit review 9 sets of duplicates, I can now see I've got these 2 records. It's going to show me all the field values. I can say I want to keep this one. Actually, no, let's keep Borer and Sons with an S on the end. We'll say we're going to use that as our primary record. And then what's really great is you can actually merge the values of these 2 by just going through the one that you're not keeping and clicking this little plus on each field that you want to merge over. And then it'll show you on your merge preview on the right-hand side. It's going to keep this one record and it'll keep both of the people that previously were linked to either one now merged into the same linked record field. So this dedupe extension is really nice for being able to first identify where your duplicates are and actually do the work of merging them in a clean UI. And if you have a lot of fields, you can also turn on this hide identical fields option and it would get rid of all the things that match between the 2. So you really are only looking at the differences. One thing I don't understand is that it does actually display formulas in this list too, which really just clogs up the list, and formulas aren't going to be affected by, like, you can't keep a formula on one versus the other. But either way, this makes it a lot easier to find where all your duplicates are. So you can do that, or you can actually just scroll through and say, I want to keep that group and kind of manually decide where everything should live. I could keep going, but we're almost out of time, and that's a couple different approaches.
That's awesome. Yeah, very useful. You can see, though, if you have a ton of data, that would take a long time to go through everyone, but you're going to have to do that anyways to clean up unless you have another way to group them. Awesome. Thank you, Alli, for showing that. And thank you all for joining. We'd love to see you back next week for another episode. Ben, thanks again for joining us, and we'll get you back on in the future. So with that, we'll see everybody next week. Take care.
Thank you.
And he's gone.
Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, OntoAir Backups, automated backups for Airtable. We'll see you next time on the BuiltOnAir podcast.